Hello and welcome to News Central Now, coming to you live from our studio in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Felicity Ezewike, and here are the top stories at this hour. Chadian rebels say they are ready to observe a ceasefire and discuss political settlement. Supporters of Somali president and opposition clash in capital Mogadishu. Africa's COVID-19 caseload surpasses 4.49 million mark. We'll bring you details shortly. We begin in North Africa, where the United Nations and France have stressed the need for a full withdrawal of foreign forces from Libya. The calls were made by Jan Kubis, who is the special envoy of the United Nations Secretary-General and France Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. The two leaders met in Paris nearly 3 months ago after participants at Libya's UN-sponsored peace talks formed a transitional government. The transitional government is tasked with overseeing preparations for a national election slated for the end of 2021. The vote is expected to stabilize the country and put an end to the chaos and conflict that has hammered vital oil exports on which the country's economy depends. Egypt's parliament has approved tougher penalties for female genital mutilation, FGM, in efforts to clamp down on the practice. The new amendments stipulate prison sentence of up to 7 years for non-medical individuals involved in performing the practice if it leads to permanent disability, and up to 10 years if it leads to death. Medical professionals who perform genital mutilation could face between 10 to 15 years in prison, according to the amendment. In addition to the prison sentences, medical practitioners convicted of performing FGM will also be stripped of their license for 5 years. The amendment also stipulates jail sentences for other persons promoting the practice, even if the procedure takes place in their absence. In Central Africa, rebels in northern Chad say they are ready to observe a ceasefire and discuss political settlement after the battlefield death of President Idris Deby last week. Kingabe Ozimi de Tapol, a spokesman for the rebels, known as Front for Change and Concord in Chad, or FACT, stated this on Sunday. The rebels came over the northern border from Libya on April 11, calling for an end to Deby's 30-year rule. They reached as close as between 200 and 300 kilometers from the capital, N'Djamena, before the rebels were pushed back by the army. The Air Force had since bombarded rebel positions, and the military said on Saturday that it has annihilated the rebels. In the meantime, civil society groups in Chad have called for a public demonstration demanding the dissolution of the Transitional Military Council, which is headed by the new leader, General Mohamed Idris Deby. He was appointed following the shocking death of his father, President Idris Deby, who died last week after battling rebels on the front line. They called on Chadians to take to the streets on Tuesday for a public demonstration. The African Union and the United Nations have asked that mechanisms be urgently set into motion to ensure the protection of citizens. We move to the Horn of Africa, where a senior Ethiopian official has said the death toll in clashes this month between Ethiopia's Oromo and Amhara ethnic groups may be as high as 200. This is higher than previous reports of at least 50 people. Ethiopia's chief ombudsman, Adel Hali, told Reuters that the updated death toll is based on information from displaced persons. He, however, cautioned that the figure is still being verified. Adel said that in the region's North Shore zone, close to 250,000 people had been displaced by the fighting, while between 20 and 25% of houses in Ataye had been burnt. He said a small town in the same zone had been completely burnt in March, but gave no more details on whether there were casualties from that incident. In the meantime, Ethiopia's electoral umpire has extended the deadline for voter registration for the upcoming general elections by 2 weeks until May 7. Voter registration was initially slated to end on Friday. The National Electoral Board of Ethiopia said the exercise was extended due to delays in opening voter registration offices and lack of sufficient information relating to registration. It adds that Ethiopia's two eastern regional states, Somali and Afar, have their voter registration deadline extended by 3 weeks until May 14. The electoral umpire has tentatively set June 5 as the date for the 6th general election. Residents say supporters of Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed and those opposed to the extension of his 4-year term clashed on Sunday on the streets of the capital, Mogadishu. Media reports say there was gunfire between pro-opposition military and government forces at Faga Junction, Mogadishu, after witnesses heard gunshots erupt in capital. Some residents say they saw 4 military vehicles positioned in one place in Faga area. The president signed a law in mid-April extending his mandate for 2 years. Former African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, had from 2010 to 2012, an AU Special Representative for Somalia, Ambassador Boubacar Diarra, has died. In a statement, AMISOM said Diarra will be remembered for working tirelessly to lay the foundation of peace, security, reconciliation and nation building for Somalia. The statement also read in part that it was during his tenure as head of AMISOM that Al-Shabaab was driven out of Mogadishu and Operation Free Shabelle was undertaken to bring security and economic revival to Greater Mogadishu and Lower Shabelle region. Ambassador Francisco Madiara, AU Special Representative for Somalia and head of AMISOM, said his indelible footprint shall always be synonymous with counter-terrorism, peace-building and post-conflict reconstruction across the continent from Somalia to Burundi and to Mali. Coming up on the news, we'll bring you updates on the coronavirus pandemic as Africa's COVID-19 caseload surpasses 4.49 million. Details of this and more stories when we return. Good to know you're still with us. Now, World Malaria Day is observed annually to bring global attention to efforts being made to bring an end to malaria and also to encourage actions to reduce suffering and death from the disease. Instituted by the World Health Organization, WHO, this year's theme is aimed at highlighting the need for continued investment and sustained political commitment for malaria prevention and control. News Central's Chidinma Ihenetu tells us more.
World Malaria Day, which takes place on April 25th annually, is an internationally recognized day, highlighting the global efforts to control malaria and celebrates the gains that have been made. The theme for this year's World Malaria Day is Reaching the Zero Malaria Target, celebrating the achievements of countries that are approaching and achieving malaria elimination.
In this World Malaria Day, we pay tribute, we recognize, we are inspired by the success of countries that eliminate malaria and achieve full elimination of malaria. And that inspiration has to be also owned by the high-burden countries. There is hope. There is a road that needs to be traveled, and they will achieve it.
It is an occasion to highlight the need for continued investment and sustained political commitment for malaria prevention and control. Instituted by the World Health Organization member states during the World Health Assembly of 2007, World Malaria Day marks successes in the fight against malaria, stating the responsibility to end malaria and urging leaders to ramp up the fight and get the world closer to being malaria-free. Since 2000, the world has made historical progress against malaria, saving millions of lives. However, half the world still lives at risk from this preventable, treatable disease, which costs a child's life every 2 minutes. Chidinma Ihenetu, News Central Television.
Now to our continued coverage of the coronavirus pandemic across Africa. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Africa has surpassed 4.49 million as of noon on Sunday. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the death toll from the pandemic stands at over 119,000, while 4.03 million patients across the continent have recovered from the disease. The Africa CDC says South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Ethiopia and Egypt are the countries with the most cases in the continent. The health agency said Southern Africa is the most affected, followed by Northern Africa and Eastern Africa, while Central Africa is the least affected region in the continent. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Sunday received a coronavirus vaccination under a nationwide vaccination drive. A statement from the presidency did not give details on the type of vaccine Sisi received. Egypt has started administering doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine under the Global COVAX agreement to provide vaccines for lower-income countries as well as jabs produced by China's Sinopharm. The number of coronavirus cases in Egypt have been steadily rising in recent weeks, and the health ministry reported 912 new cases and 39 more deaths as of Saturday. We head to Uganda, where the United Nations Refugee Agency says the country has rolled out a major COVID-19 vaccination campaign targeting 1.4 million refugees in the country's crowded resettlements. UNHCR spokesperson in Uganda, Wendy Kasuja, said in a statement that at least 1 million refugees will be inoculated against COVID-19 in the ongoing Phase 1 vaccination exercise. Spokesperson for the Ministry of Health said the vaccinations are being done to reduce the severity of COVID-19 in the country's refugee settlements. Uganda hosts more than 1.4 million refugees, mainly from neighboring South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Burundi. Staying in East Africa, Kenya's confirmed COVID-19 infections in the country has risen to more than 156,000 after the health ministry announced 469 new positive cases from tests conducted in the last 24 hours. The ministry also reported 19 new virus-related deaths, bringing the country's total number of fatalities to 2,622. Both the caseload and the death toll reported by the East African country are the 8th highest in Africa. Kenya's efforts to contain the pandemic include various government-imposed measures such as a nationwide nighttime curfew, a partial lockdown and mandatory wearing of face masks. The nationwide vaccination exercise is also ongoing, with more than 700,000 people having received their first jabs. Malawi's government says it will go ahead with plans to destroy thousands of expired COVID-19 vaccine doses, despite calls from the World Health Organization and the Africa Center for Disease Control not to destroy them. The WHO and Africa CDC this week had urged African countries not to destroy COVID-19 vaccines that may have passed their expiration dates, saying they are still safe to use. However, Malawi's government says the appeals have come too late. Malawi's Secretary for Health says destroying the expired vaccine is in line with Malawi's government guidelines on expired pharmaceutical products. When the news returns, we'll bring you an update on the Indonesian Navy submarine that sank off the coast of Bali on Wednesday. Do stay with us. Some news on the missing submarine. Now, officials say an Indonesian Navy submarine that sank off the coast of Bali on Wednesday has been found split into 3 on the seabed. All the vessel's 53 crew members have been confirmed dead. Navy officials said they had received signals from the sub's location more than 800 meters deep on Sunday. An underwater rescue vehicle loaned by Singapore was sent down to get visual confirmation of the wreckage. The KRI Nangala disappeared after requesting permission to dive during torpedo drill. The reason for its sinking is not yet clear. Some business news now. Tunisia has asked the International Monetary Fund for a new financing program and is preparing to start talks with the fund. This comes as Prime Minister Yichem Mechichi prepares to travel to Washington on May 3 to hold talks with IMF officials. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, in a letter to Mechichi, said Tunisia made the request for support on April 19 and the fund would assign a delegation to conduct technical talks with Tunisia when it receives more information about the reform program. The letter gave no details about the length or size of the support requested. Tunisia agreed an economic reform package with powerful labor union UDTT at the end of last month, opening the way for an agreement with the IMF for financial support. Still in business, this time we go to Kenya, where the central bank has said its monetary policy committee will hold its next rate-setting meeting on May 26. The bank made the announcement in a circular on its website. At its last meeting in March, the bank held its benchmark lending rate at 7% for the 7th consecutive time. It said the decision to hold the rate was due to a package of measures unveiled since last year, which had protected the economy from substantial decline. Now, one of South Africa's largest public sector trade unions said it is preparing for a strike as its wage talks with the government reached a deadlock. The Public Servants Association said in a statement that it rejected a revised government offer made on Friday and would strike to secure salary increase for its more than 235,000 members. At the start of the negotiations in March, unions demanded wage increase of inflation plus 4% for all workers in the 2021-22 fiscal year, as well as better housing payments and a risk allowance because of COVID-19. Annual inflation is currently around 3%. South Africa is trying to remain public sector salaries to arrest the rapid build-up in debt that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In sports, we begin with tennis, where Rafael Nadal saved a championship point to beat Stefanos Tsitsipas. In cricket, Pakistan took a 24-run victory over Zimbabwe in the third and final 2020 International at Harare Sports Club on Sunday. Mohammad Rizwan hammered an unbeaten 91 and Hassan Ali took 4 wickets to put Pakistan in the lead. Zimbabwe replied with 141-7, falling well short of the target as Pakistan claimed a 2-1 victory in the series. The tour continues with the first test on Thursday. And Nigeria's Kamaru Usman has retained the undisputed UFC welterweight title at UFC 261. It took place in front of 15,000 fans in Jacksonville, was a rematch of their meeting. And finally, in football, Manchester City have claimed a record-equalling 4th successive League Cup triumph after a 1-0 win against Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday. Aymeric Laporte got the winner from a late header in the 82nd minute. The defender met Kevin De Bruyne's free kick and headed past goalkeeper. Manchester City have now matched Liverpool's feat of winning the competition for 4 seasons in a row and also joined Liverpool with the most League Cup wins on 8. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, here's a quick recap of our top stories. Chadian rebels say they are ready to observe a ceasefire and discuss a political settlement. And supporters of the president of Somalia and the opposition have clashed in the streets of the nation's capital, Mogadishu. And finally, we told you that Africa's COVID-19 caseload has surpassed the 4.49 million mark. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also catch up with our news and programs. Just download the News Central TV mobile app on Play Store and iOS. You can also watch us live on StarTimes channel 274. As always, many thanks for watching us and good night from Lagos.